I don't know how to start the bantery stuff.
You have a standard welcome for this thing, or?
Not really. We're sort of figuring it out. Ren and I did the first one. We did Muppets from Space.
Oh, nice.
This is the superior movie. So we'll just jump in with the hi friends.
Hi. I'm back.
This is not Muppet Sex and Trauma. But there are Muppets.
What are we calling this now that it's not the original show this was about?
This is Farscape adjacent.
Okay.
Or not Muppet Sex and Trauma. I don't know exactly.
Although there's more Muppetry in this one than
well,
the original plan.
Yes. Yeah. Like these are they're releasing these in between to space out the Farscape ones, and I don't know what order or what I'll be doing, but like is various things that are somewhat tangentially connected to Farscape, and so therefore Muppets.
Which is one of my favorite topics of all time.
Which is why I thought this would be a grand one to have you on. So
Muppety stuff all over this place, including right on me. Yeah, I'll show you this. I've got 2 copies of this shirt. That's how much Muppety cred I have. Is 2 people have gifted me this one. This is the black tank top version, and I have a gray T-shirt version of the exact T-shirt. I got my Dr. Teeth shirt on, and I gave myself a Kermit themed Manny. I'm not great at doing nails, but I got it. And then I was going to wear my earbuds, but they're not working great. So I got my Kermit earbuds. I do have a Kermit watch like Walter has in the movie, but it's not the same one he has in the movie. And then here's the best part. The best part of all. Here's the best part. Yeah.
Terrific.
I wear these more than anybody with my age or level of education probably should. Yeah. I'm a bit of a fan is what I'm saying, Sara.
Yeah. So Terri, other than a fan of the Muppets, you want to introduce yourself to the folks?
Sure. My name is Terri Roberts. I am a educator and fitness instructor in Halifax, Canada, and I run a small channel called the Pink Dumbbell Problem, which has been on hiatus for the last year and almost a year and a half now, because I've had a day job with other projects going on, but it will be coming back this summer, sometime July-ish, early August. I'm not sure exactly when.
But you've got a good back catalog people should check out.
I do have quite a back catalog there, and some of that's going to get redone because the lighting was terrible, and I have a better camera now and better audio. So some of those things are going to get redone and put together, the small ones put together in longer videos. So,
and Terri's work is around fitness, feminism, and agnotology, which is a very cool field.
Yeah.
The study of ignorance.
Study of ignorance, which makes me a very busy person. I never rest. Yeah. I never rest.
And today we're here to talk about the 2001 film The Muppets.
2011.
2011. Yes.
So 2001, yeah.
I have no idea what year it is, what time zone it is.
2011.
2011. The Muppets return to cinema. And what a return.
It was great.
Oh, okay. I haven't really written a summary for this, but okay. So we have 2 brothers, Walter and Gary. One is a Muppet, one is a man.
Which becomes very important later on.
Indeed. And they and Mary, Gary's girlfriend, take a trip to LA. And as Walter is a Muppet super fan, they go visit the Muppet Studios and sneak in and overhear that the evil Richmond is trying to steal it to turn it into a oil thingy. And so they get the band back together to try and raise some money to fix a clause in the Muppets contract, and we have all sorts of shenanigans to put on a Muppet telethon, and it's just delightful.
It is. Absolutely is. I I think a lot of people, when this came out, were kind of like, it's not, people my age in particular who grew up with the original show and the original movies and stuff like that were kind of like, about it. But, I really love it. And I just rewatched it to prepare for this. And it holds up better than I even thought it would. Here we are a little over a decade after it came out, and it's still, there's some timelessness about it.
It really does. Like I wasn't sure when I first heard they were making another Muppet movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch this and it's like, oh my God, it's not a cynical nostalgia grab. It's actually
there was a little bit of that. There was a little bit of nostalgia. There was a little bit of fan service. It was a very, I feel watching it anyway, it was a very Gen X movie.
There's definitely nostalgia, but
references to Nirvana's music, for example. and with Jack Black on the stage, no less. I mean, that was aimed at.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's nostalgia, but it doesn't feel cash grab. It doesn't feel exploitative. It's like, this is how to make nostalgia into something good.
And update it. And I think one of the things that happened with Muppet, I loved Muppets from Space, but there was no original songs in it, and that was a big criticism of that film at the time. So they did a nice mix of, because what the Muppets have always done in the past was the TV series. The original show in the theater was songs from other movies. It was pop songs. It was, if they had a musical guest, it was their songs. It was, the old English music hall tunes and stuff like that. I mean, they made the whole show on those. So it was never original songs. And then with the movies, for the most part, they did all original stuff. So when Muppets from Space came out, and it was the great, like, it was all the funk tunes and stuff, and I love that. I think a lot of people were like, well, yeah, but where are the original songs? Because it's a Muppet movie, and there should be original songs in there. So I think they kind of hit the right mix with this one, the 2011 one, with getting, like, there's some watching it back again. There's a couple songs I realized, I haven't listened to that in a few years, like the Chickens in the telethon doing the CeeLo Green song, but which with some great subtext in there if you know what that song is, by the by. So I think I guess music's probably the right place to start, is it, for this conversation?
Yeah, well, I think before we do that, we'll say that this was directed by James Bobbin. And written by Jason Segel and Nicholas Stoller, who have been co-writers on a bunch of stuff. I'm a big fan of Jason Segel's work.
I do too. And it felt like he wrote this.
It felt like a fan wrote this with love.
Mean, he is kind of the real Walter in some ways. He could tell when he was writing,
Yeah.
That Walter was, even though he was playing Gary, Walter was a little bit biopic there. And I think probably for a number of people involved in the production.
Yeah.
I certainly felt Walter was there's a bit of me in there.
Yes. And I think Walter is, I think, what makes this movie work so well, because his nostalgia is so pure and innocent, and they make it an identity story instead of being like fan service, the, like, in the sort of way, cynical way, it becomes like an exploration of this part of Walter that is a part of all of us who love the Muppets. And it comes from such a genuine place that it just gets you. And I think I love that they play with, there's so many old Hollywood musical touches, and like, it's just, there's a love of genre to this that is just delightful. Like, it's especially the musical stuff, like
and Jason Segel could sing. I had no idea.
Yeah, and he's not the best singer, but he works.
He works. Well, and he wrote something he could sing well, obviously.
But, and he'd written musicals before, because
I didn't know that.
I think Forgetting Sarah Marshall that has a whole subplot.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
about the Dracula musical.
That's
or was that
It's been a gazillion years since I saw that, but yeah, that now that you say that, that rings a bell. Yeah.
Okay, I have had a crush on the guy since Freaks and Geeks.
Oh wow! You know what? I'm gonna lose all my Gen X card right now. I've never seen that show.
It's very good.
I've heard.
It's too good to have made it to have survived into something else. But I think most people watch that and were crushing on James Franco because. But Jason Segel is just this big, adorable doofus, and I love his writing. So yeah,
nice to type. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah,
and I think casting of Amy Adams is just genius as well because she is just pure sunlight.
She's perfect in it. She's really, really perfect in it. Yeah,
and such a talented actor too. Like. She went on to Arrival, which is one of the best films I've ever seen.
Right after this. Yeah.
So
with alien communication, and then the Muppets on the other, and which in a sense aren't that different, but yeah.
I should do Arrival as one of the Farscape adjacent because like communicating with aliens.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
very different kind of aliens.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time either. Yeah, and for somebody like her who's a triple threat and can do all of that stuff, there's not as decades ago, her career would have just been a steady stream of film musical after film musical because that's what she's got the chops. But those are quite rare now. That it's nice to see there was a vehicle for her to do that again, and there's been a few vehicles for her to do that. Career.
She must have good management because she picks roles extremely well. I mean,
if I ever get in the biz.
She still gives me chills as the cousin in Buffy.
That's going back a few years too. Yeah. Well, and you were kind of touching on some of the themes around Walter and stuff before, and what I really like about the whole theme about Walter finding his family, he doesn't lose his original family, he doesn't lose Gary, but he finds his tribe, he finds his original family, his found family, and all of that, and that's also a story that really resonates right now, and because they're Muppets, it can be universally applied. So whatever you think,
but it's hella queer.
Yeah, well, they spent the first however decade plus of their careers in a theater. So yeah, in the 70s and 80s, where else were you going to go for your career? You're going to the theater. But there is that, but it's the same in so many other things. I mean, any aspect of life in which you feel isolated and alone and unconnected, when you find any theme about finding those connections with the people who get you, right? That's something that the vast majority of people, I think, relate to, at least on some level.
And I really love the opening part where we get to see like the perspective of a person who doesn't fit in, even though he's got a good life, but this very obvious not fitting in is so queer. But he sees himself in something on TV, and just the way they capture that so well. The oh my God, that's me, that's what I'm missing. And the way that can become just everything.
I think a lot of films, a lot of stories, whatever format they're in, I think a lot of them try to show you someone having their aha moment, and this is one of probably the best ones I've ever seen of somebody having that spark of and it's a puppet, for heaven's sakes. But
this is the genius of the Muppets.
This is the thing. The puppetry of all Muppet things is so brilliant that you can actually see it dawning on him that, oh, this is who I am. This is my group. This is my theater troupe. And when you never see somebody like yourself, like you said, it doesn't really matter how great your family is or your school or your neighborhood or anything. You still need to see yourself represented. And there's a big representation moment happening there.
And it's the moment where he tries to get into the television and can't. Like, they come out and they're like, I love that way that's done. They look like they're it's like got lines and they look like they're analog TV. but they come out and then he can't get in, and it's so well done. They do like, and the whole thing of him growing up and the Muppets and the ways that he just doesn't fit. It's so well done.
I was thinking of that too, with the bit where they do the of course Muppet montage, right? Where Gary keeps getting taller and Walter is staying the same, and they're marking their heights on the door frame and stuff like that. And that is, I as much as there's queer allegory to found family and stuff like this, and there's definitely a disability recognition in there.
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
The playing baseball bit where Gary has to throw him in the air so he's big enough to catch the ball, stuff like that. Like there's accommodation, and then there's being able to spend time with people that you don't have to explain yourself to.
Yeah, and there's
definitely a disability metaphor in that.
And that the roller coaster thing captures so much so simply. He just can't, and the guy treats him as a kid, and that is like, as a person where size is where my misfit, the most visible misfittingness, like that's just like one of my first struggles with the built environment was not being able to go on a roller coaster ride. Right. Not that I actually don't like them particularly much, but it was like a fairground ride that just didn't fit. And that was, it's such a simple thing and it's such a quick moment, but they capture, but it's just touches like that.
Yeah.
Just tell you it's a good world, which is nice because it's Muppet and we don't want to go into the dark stuff too much.
No.
But there's just the not fitting.
Yeah.
And I think in the 2000s, in the 2010s, that's a really good way of capturing.
Was
because we're not looking at, like, if we were honest and did it now, you'd need some more darker stuff to capture not fitting in and capture the queer experience.
And that idea that anybody can fit in, I mean, that's been Gonzo's whole arc. I mean, I know you already did an episode on that. And Muppets from Space and finding out Gonzo's origin story. But that's been Gonzo's whole arc from the beginning, is he's a weirdo.
He's a whatever.
He's a whatever. We don't, and I mean, there's Muppets that are classified as whatevers. There's a whole thing in Muppet production of having whatever puppets or anything puppets. And Gonzo kind of started off with that. And I think when Dave Goelz hit upon that weird looking little guy with the right voice, that's something magical happened and evolved out of that. But even going back to the original Muppet movie and stuff, the whole thing at the end of that was, we need more, and they did it again in Muppets Take Manhattan, I think, if I remember correctly. We need more bears and frogs and whatevers and chickens and throw a penguin in it.
The lovers, the dreamers, and me. The rainbow connection.
Yeah. Everybody is welcome in this absolutely bonkers crew because nobody here is normal.
And it's wonderful. They had to include rainbow connection, and that was and to have that as the culmination of the Miss Piggy and Kermit reconnection, and it just and then everyone comes in, and that's just like, it's got to be rainbow connection.
Yeah. And there was a neat bit in there too, because the other thing that I loved in that whole rainbow connection sequence in this film was the bit where Floyd and Animal have a moment backstage. And I've been a amateur musician my whole life. It's never been a career path for me. It's always been a hobby. But so Floyd is, there's a reason why I have the Electric Mayhem on my shirt. Floyd is my personal favorite because we're all bass players are like Floyd. We all act like that, and all drummers act like it. I mean, they're archetypes. They are, you wanted to go into Jungian psychology, you could on these guys. And there's this beautiful moment as Kermit's out front with the banjo doing Rainbow Connection, that they have that great moment backstage where Floyd's been holding onto his drumsticks all this time until he was ready, and he gives them the almost Phil Collins-esque drum fill comes in and Animal's back, right at the tail end to wrap it all up. It was a fantastic moment in that particular sequence within a sequence. I don't know if you want to call it that. But really, again, about finding, your true self. The whole movie, Animal's denying who he truly is. He's trying to, he's trying to do with the therapy people have been telling him. Which is also a great scene early on with Jack Black and Kristen Schaal. I'd forgotten Kristen Schaal was the therapist in that. So when I rewatched it again, I'm like, oh yeah, she's in this. And that was a great scene. But there you were saying about the lightness and the darkness and stuff like that. There are always little twinklings of the darkness in anything Muppet related. And she says in that therapy thing, Kristen Schaal is the therapist in the anger management therapy. And she says something to Animal about this being his court-appointed therapy or something like that. So what has gone on that Animal has had to be in the legal system and appointed to manage anger management therapy, and Jack Black being his sponsor. And it was really just, the Muppets. It's not a Muppet show of some kind if it doesn't have a running gag in it. So that worked through the film. But really, Walter's trying to find his true identity and find his people. Animal's been there all along and he's trying to deny it. And it's driving him bonkers. And at the end, the song was struggling without him because every band follows the drummer. You have to.
Yeah. You need the rhythm.
You can't not follow the drummer. And the band was struggling without him. And finally he comes back and he pulls the whole thing together and it works.
Yep.
So there's a message in there too about not denying your true nature.
There is one criticism I have. Which is one running gag I did not like, is the faux Miss Piggy.
Yes,
feels like a trans
couple of
joke.
Jokes there that don't hold up today.
Yeah,
and they were vague enough that you could give them a kinder reading, but.
Yeah, it very much reads, that character very much reads as a trans person.
Yeah. And now, nowadays, yes.
Yeah.
I think most audiences back then, no. I think it was not, most people weren't as familiar with.
Yeah, I think they were playing on a sort of, they were doing a gender bending joke.
They were. Yeah. And more, I think perhaps more of a drag joke or maybe a grifter in drag kind of joke. None of them really would fly.
It just didn't land. I didn't pick up on it the first time around.
Yeah.
But this time watching it now, I was like, oh, that feels mean-spirited.
Yeah.
And the Muppets are never mean-spirited.
No. And I think at the time, you wouldn't have expected the average writer in Hollywood to be aware enough of trans people and the issues around that and the insults that come with it to be aware of that. I think they were just really making an ugly mannish woman kind of joke.
Yeah.
And not enough woman.
That there's always been a bit of a issues in the Muppets and femininity, I think, and how the Muppets represent women.
I mean, it's that whole production crew. I mean, there's always been women there from the start, but it's been mostly men. Most of the female characters, including Miss Piggy, have always been played by men. They have always sort of struggled, especially early on with their female characters. I mean, some of the early episodes of the original TV series, the portrayals of Miss Piggy in particular are ghastly. I mean, they're not okay anymore.
Yeah, I have a friend who doesn't like the Muppets, and one of the main reasons is Miss Piggy. And it's true. There are times they get her right, and I do love Miss Piggy. And there are times that she feels like it feels like they're mocking bigger women, like they're mocking the idea of women being assertive. And yeah, like definitely. I think in the first Muppet movie, I think that for the time they get it quite well. I wasn't thrilled with the Muppets from Space representation of Miss Piggy.
Yeah,
and like I think mostly I like it in Christmas Carol. It's sort of like
well, Christmas Carol's already the character's already kind of laid out. Although
and
go Miss Piggy at the end, but yeah.
We do Christmas Carol. I do a Christmas Carol reading every year, and I always make a joke about the fact that Dickens doesn't name women.
Yeah. No.
So like,
And it's always that, for me, it's always that struggle between understanding the historical context in which these things were created versus making sure I don't sound like I'm excusing anything because of that. But at the same time, my educational brain, we can't blame people for not handling things or context they didn't know about, and that wasn't well known at the time. So,
but when we watch things now, we do have
we
to.
can now, but we can analyze it now. And
yeah,
and
it's important. It's important that we do. It's important that we criticize the media we love, and that we, especially as women, we think about how we are represented.
Yeah, and the bigger value for me, you mentioned early on that I work in agnotology, is not so much when these things are simply, nothing is ever just a reflection of its own creation in its own time, because these things, especially the more famous or more popular they are, these things then become instructive.
Yes.
So if it's not so much that Jim Henson or Frank Oz made terrible, anti-feminist or fat jokes against Miss Piggy. It's that people took those jokes and brought them into real life and probably don't even remember where they came from. And that's a great example of agnotology right there. So yeah, it's when these things become part of our general vernacular and how we interact with each other because we see them in pop culture repeatedly. That's where for me the more interesting analysis comes in.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the better representations of Miss Piggy. I think it's interesting to make her the plus size editor of Vogue, and I don't know that Vogue even has a plus size editor.
They do. They probably don't. They probably should.
They don't. I know their fashion, their sewing patterns don't come in plus sizes.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I find with Miss Piggy too, it depends on sort of, you're right, there's sort of different ways that she's handled, or different variations of her, because I found with Muppets from Space and with the 2015 TV series, which I really quite liked. I don't think I know anybody else who's watched it but me, but
I haven't.
In those, she's so career oriented as to be callous in some ways. Mm-hmm. And to be she's always, and even in the original series, in the theater, there was times where she was so incredibly self-centered. And that is sort of meant to be, I think, a reflection on the entertainment world. I mean, people in that world are like that quite often, but sometimes that they play her as very one-dimensional with that. And the 2015 TV series leaned into that fairly heavily, and it wasn't until pretty much near the end they started to really redeem her.
I think she really suffers from the one and only problem, is that she almost all the time she's our only female representation.
Yeah,
Janice is there, but she isn't there very much, and she sort of is a different trope.
And Camilla's there, but she literally doesn't speak. It's like one of the three main running female characters on this whole franchise doesn't speak.
Yeah,
except in clucking. So yeah, there's definitely a female representation problem there. They've had a few others occasionally. One of the things I really loved about the 2015 TV series was Yolanda the Rat was in it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Yolanda's a very, very niche character. If you do Muppets Take Manhattan, you'll see Yolanda a little bit. And
I haven't watched that since I was a kid.
she's great. She mostly exists to put Rizzo in his place. But yeah, I mean, you're otherwise, Piggy and occasionally a bit from Janice, and that's it. So it's really suffering from that. It really,
at least Muppet Babies gave us another female character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you're right. She's a bit in that Smurfette zone where she has to kind of carry the whole gender,
Yeah, and that's just, it's a bit too much for it to work, because they do want to play on the diva stereotypes and and there is a there having worked in the theater, there is a there and it's just like, the problem is that she's the only one, and so it just becomes a bit But and sometimes the humor can be a little bit mean spirited
Yeah.
around the edges around Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
Usually the Muppets are all love and light and that, but sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I do like one of the things that I love about all of the Muppet materials over all of the decades now is that they will, as much as they're very, very love and light and rainbows, they will always have those little hints. Like there's those little snippets of reality where there can be some dark humor coming in.
Yeah, you don't get rainbows without rain.
That's right. And I loved in this 2011 movie in particular the bit Amy Adams, of course, we have already said she did a great job of it, where she gets her solo song, the party, and
her and Miss Piggy
get to in separate scenes, but in the same song, have that moment, and it goes back to what we were just saying about the paucity of female characters in this whole entire franchise, but also it almost wants to border on pity, self-pity, but it doesn't. They're just both strong enough that they're not gonna let themselves go down that road. But there is that darkness in there of seeing characters whose emotional needs for whatever reason aren't being met. And so the Muppets as an entire thing, as an entire world, doesn't ignore that, and doesn't ignore some of the grosser sides of reality. One of the things I noticed in this watching, and again, it was common in Muppets from Space and in the 2015 TV series, was the bear, Bobo Bear, is a total brown noser.
He's adorable. I would choose him over a man.
And you look at who Tex Richmond, which is a great name, by the way.
Yeah.
I love it when they just put the finger right on the nose on some of these things. He and Uncle Deadly are the sort of the henchmen for Tex Richmond. And it's like, yeah, because he's always sucking up to whomever is the person in power. And that is such a normal thing in life. And that's not just a theater or a Hollywood thing. I mean, that's everywhere. I like what they do too with Uncle Deadly. He switches sides.
I love the Uncle Deadly. Just because I have a theatrical accent.
In the 2015 series, he's Miss Piggy's personal assistant, and that dynamic was
wonderful,
really good. I that's probably one of my favorite parts of that whole series, was the two of them having moments and him dealing with her diva-ishness. But yeah, they play him for evil and play him for good, almost 50-50. But yeah, there's those little hints of reality of the personalities that seep into things. And Walter represents that writ large, but you can see it in the other ones as well. It's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking of sort of like the light and the dark, we have the song. I mean, they're all very good songs, but the Muppet or a Man, the Oscar-winning song, well-deservedly so.
I still can't believe that won an Oscar.
I can. I remember watching it.
I'm still shocked.
It kind of surprises me that it's the only Muppet song to win an Oscar. I mean,
I think part of it, I wonder sometimes with things like the Oscars and any of those award shows, I think there is certain years there is a sense in the adjudicating, the jurying, whatever, that certain properties have finally have to have their turn. And the Muppets have turned in so many great movies and TV shows over the years and never gotten a thing for it.
Yeah, like I honestly,
if we don't give the Muppets something now, when will we ever?
Yeah, I think the Oscars are entirely bullshit. But
all those award shows are.
Yeah, I mean, you competing art is silly.
Yeah, definitely.
This song does if something is going to deserve cheap gold statues, then this song does. Because and I feel like there's the queeriness of it. I feel like that's they put a little button on that by giving Jim Parsons,
that was such a shock to see him in the mirror. I was like, woo! I remember the moment when I first saw this film the first time and saw Jim Parsons show up in the mirror, and I was like, oh god. Then what's neat is because they first showed us Jason Segal's character as a Muppet, and then they showed us Walter as a human. And in the original series, the TV series, the hope had been, or the initial part of the initial concept had been to present the human guest star of every episode with a Muppet of themselves. And there was just no time to do that in production, and it just couldn't be done. It was done for one or two people. If you watch the very first season, a couple of that 1 or 2 episodes of it, they do that. And then they just couldn't keep up with it time frame wise. So it almost harkens back to the very, very, very original season of the original property that they did that with Segal. And I don't know if he knew that was a thing when he wrote the script, or if that was something that came along later in production, or how that came along.
I'm betting he knew that, because it feels like this
seems like he's a big enough fan he would know that.
Yeah. And it also reminds me of like the Angel episode with the puppet.
Yeah. And so there was a lovely little twist around that.
Yeah, and it's also just it's an exceptionally good song, and like the idea of identity and choosing your path, and like the whole growing up, where one of them has to find his place. They both kind of have to find their place, because Gary has to choose his relationship. And I do love, especially having lived in Scotland and everything, like I'm a Muppet of a man. It's just delightful, because that is a common insult.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Call someone a Muppet.
I've never understood why people love using Muppet as an insult, and
I think it predates the Muppets.
Predates the Muppets, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. But it's just one of those weird things, and so
they do it all over the place there.
And it's like he is being an idiot boyfriend. So
totally.
In a way that totally makes sense, and it's totally relatable and understandable, and the whole thing, and it's really well done. We get the mirror and the mirrors, and
there's a great bit there too. There's that subplot about Gary and Mary, which is cute as hell. There's so many, and I have a name that rhymes with that as well. There's so many names that rhyme with that. It's almost pathetic, but it's kind of cute. But yeah, there's definitely a growing up and growing into relationshiphood subplot there that Gary wasn't ready for, and it took him, it took him being faced with the reality of his existence and his life and his path forward to get his head out of his arse.
Yeah. And yet Mary is never like her desire for him to choose her, and it's all treated very respectfully, and the fact that she's so kind, and she's maybe a little bit overly supportive, but in a way that like feels very musical and feels very like and it works out. It's very sweet, and the fact that they plant the sort of Chekhov's mechanic. She has the skills, and then she saves the day. It's very sweet, and it's without them ever overtaking the Muppets. We get a genuine story for the human characters.
Yeah, definitely. That's hard to do. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed in interviews with actors or performers of any kind who've worked with the Muppets over years is that it is a struggle to not be completely upstaged by these hunks of felt and ping pong balls, and at the same time, you're on their show, right? This is their story. This is their stage. This is their film. But yeah, it was nice to see that it wasn't that there was actual characterization there and not just some cameo. Although the cameos, and that's something else we should talk about. The cameos in this, like in all Muppet movies, were great. They had some really fantastic ones.
Wait. Muppets from Space had a bunch of cameos that had us going.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched that one in a long time.
This one did very well, but that one had like some very problematic figures.
Right. Right.
But this, for the most part, they're, fairly charming or at least inoffensive people. Jack Black is almost universally charming.
Yeah.
Shallow Hal's
basically a living Muppet in his own right. So
yeah, like it shows the horrorness, the horribility of Shallow Hal that they actually make him unappealing. It had to be that bad.
Yeah.
Because he's Jack Black, and he, in every other role has always been charming and delightful.
Yes, exactly.
And yes, and playing himself here and having a lot of fun doing it. Rashida Jones does a fine job.
Yeah. Yeah, she was good. And this is again one of those there was almost a misdirect there because we know Tex Richmond's definitely the bad guy. It seemed like she could have been a bad guy as well.
Yeah.
She was starting out that way of like telling them, no, you can't have a show and all that kind of thing. So she had some nice moments there as well.
Yeah. But I think, Tex Richmond, like, what's his name? It's Chris Cooper. Yes.
It is Cooper. Okay.
Yeah. Is definitely one of those, sort of, hey, it's that guy.
It's that guy, yeah.
And it does such a great, it's just a terrific job here.
And so over the top and so cartoonish and so all he was missing was the mustache, the handlebar mustache to twiddle to show he was the evil one.
And the maniacal laugh thing.
And the maniacal laugh.
Maniacal laugh.
Only the Muppets could pull that off. But yeah, he was great. And they've always had, over the top evil guys for the most part, sometimes ambiguous, like they did with Rashida Jones on this one, but yeah, they've usually had pretty over the top evil. And I don't know why they let subtleties happen in other areas, but not that one for some reason. But it works.
But it works, and it's fun. I think it's fun to play an out and out villain.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could tell they were having a great time. Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's like, as much as this one definitely has a Gen X audience in mind, I think this is intended for Gen X and their kids.
Yeah. And that's again, that's been a hallmark of the entire brand. There's jokes that as kids we never got in the original movies and the TV series that now I go, God, how did they get away with that? Right, but that was the whole
Definitely.
point. And one of the things I remember reading about Henson, I've read a few different biographies and stuff about him over the years, was that he was absolutely bound and determined that a show that was watchable for the whole family was not going to bore the adults to death.
Yeah.
And that there would be stuff there that as adults we could go and laugh at. Which again, we started talking about the music originally. Let's get back to that for a minute. The chicken's doing the lady, the hens, Camilla, and
doing fuck you. Yeah, that's
fuck you by Celia Green. I mean, if I hadn't been a lifelong fan and hadn't, read some of these things like these, background that behind Henson's thinking of the philosophy behind this, that would have shocked and dismayed me. But because I had already been familiar with that stuff, I went, there it is. That's it. That's the spot right there. That's where they're doing it. And with it, is it this year? Yeah, this year would be the 30th anniversary of Jim's passing.
Yeah.
It's 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd time go? But you can see that they're keeping that part of his premise and the basis of this still going in moments like that, and the barbershop quartet doing Smells Like Teen Spirit, which I was a whole, several words into the song before I realized what they were doing. That one really was a curveball musically, which I love. And again, they're a barbershop quartet and they're supposed to be shaving Jack Black, and Beaker comes up with the axe, and then they do Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is like such an iconic song, for my generation. And I was like, okay, are they just ticking off all the fan service stuff at once in one box? And basically, yeah, that's what they were doing.
Yeah, it's delightful.
It was great. And like I said, I was starting to say before, there was a nice mix in this one of some original songs, some big showstoppers. I know the Oscar winning one in particular. I still go back to Amy and Miss Piggy's feature song. That's still the better song for me.
A me party.
And then the closing big production number in the middle of the street at the end, which is again something big musicals have done for years.
Yeah, and it's the opening and closing same song. It's very bookend. It's quite delightful and really does feel like straight out of a Zeffirelli film. Yeah.
And and they did similar in the opening sequence. Is the opening or maybe a few minutes into Great Muppet Caper, which is an underrated one. People kind of go, oh yeah, there was that one where they went to England, and yeah, okay. And the main stars of that, of course, are no longer with us as well. So and maybe that's why it doesn't get the eyeballs that the other ones do. But I think I think that there was a little, to me anyway, I took that as a little nod and a wink back to that earlier film.
Yeah, there's a lot of nods to various things, like the Sweetums. They recreated the park, the car dealership perfectly. The Sweetums running, I just love that.
And there was also too when they have the moment backstage right before Rainbow Connection. Miss Piggy realizes Kermit kept the photo of their fake wedding.
Oh yes. And
that was from Muppets Take Manhattan, right? When she faked him out and got a real priest for the staged wedding. that still cracks me up all these years later. So yeah, those were stills from that film, from the look of it. And so there was nice little throwbacks to, there's a whole thing about lineages in storytelling. When you've got a franchise or a property or whatever that has been around as long as the Muppets have, it's I think 50 years or pretty close to it now. And really some of the characters go back further than that, because Henson was using them in other shows and using for advertising and stuff like that. Ralph the dog originally advertised dog food and things like that. So I mean, some of these characters go back even further, and there's those little moments, as much as we can criticize them and call them fan service if you consider that a criticism, but really a lot of what it is these are nods and winks to the originators, and in this case an originator who's no longer with us. And
yeah, I think
still doing they may have changed the voice actors have changed, the puppeteers have changed, the time frames in which things are, the technology has changed, all that's changed, but there's still Jim's.
Yeah, and I know when they first show in his office and they have all the pictures and there's Kermit and Jim there, and I just caught my breath.
Yeah,
I think there's a way to do tributes that's different from fan service. Like I'm trying to sort of place why. I don't think it's just my nostalgia that I'm trying to think the difference between this and Picard season 3.
Oh, okay.
Which I did not like.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of like the difference between nostalgia is an ingredient here. It's it's
Okay.
and memories and tribute. It's all they feel like they are an ingredient in a larger thing that is, whereas in that felt like that was just a big lump of sugar.
Okay.
As
It's
opposed, like
yeah.
with a few
Dopamine to the
other
fan brain.
with a few other things sprinkled in,
Mhm,
as
mhm.
opposed to to like using it as an ingredient versus making it basically everything.
You get everything.
To the point it's like, no, you can stop
Yeah.
now. You're doing this just this is, there's yeah.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
don't even I don't know if you saw.
I
I'm sure
haven't. No,
there are,
I haven't gotten into that series, but
it's an interesting sort of how to get writing wrong. Uh, each
okay.
each of each of the
Starting with W.
seasons is a different kind of how to get things wrong, but also kind of interesting. But I'm going down. It's just like the most obvious example to me of feeling like the difference, feeling like overdoing the nostalgia, where it feels like you're just like playing with the action figures. Whereas
Oh, I see.
this doesn't feel like you're playing with the action figures of the
Mhm,
Muppets. It
mhm.
feels like you're telling a story and
Yeah.
you're including that there is this 50-year history. There is this attachment we all have to Jim Henson. Um, and it's like they didn't do a look, here's a picture. Look, here's Jim Henson. Look. It's there in the frame. You can't miss it. But
Yeah.
if you don't know, like the kids just aren't gonna know who
No,
that
no.
is, aren't gonna
But
pay
that's
attention.
meaningful to us as adults
Yeah.
watch. And
And
that's exactly what Jim would have wanted it to be.
yeah,
I think. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. And yeah, and there's there's a good sense there. I mean, maybe this is why they put it back in the original theater anyway, that that there's looking around my apartment here, all the stuff that I've eventually got to declutter in this place, right? Like there's pictures somewhere in here, printed pictures from back in the days when we printed pictures of people that are no longer with us, right? Like
yeah.
it gives it that as much as we're looking at pieces of, like I said, felt and ping pong balls on the screen, there are those little snippets of realism that make it work, and that's exactly one of them. Of course, if Kermit really had an office, he would have a picture of himself and Jim on the wall somewhere. Of course he would.
Yeah.
Of course he would.
Yeah.
And all of those little you know tidbits. Yeah, yourself as like if you walk into an old theater that's had a gazillion productions in it, and you trip across a box of props or costumes, and you go, oh yeah, right, there's a skull that was from the time we did Hamlet or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Those little bits of memory get picked up. So yeah, if you're in a space that's that old, you would expect to see that. So when you're dealing with characters that old, you put them in that space. You just do.
And because we have Walter, who we've connected with and built as a character, to who these things are meaningful.
Mhm.
There's, it's there for him to give meaning to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, it just this is like there have been so many remakes and revisits and reboots, and you know at this time and since this film was made, and I don't think any of them have gotten anywhere near as good as this one. They
Yeah.
managed to pull it off.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And again, people make fun of things that have too much fan service in it, but it took a fan to write it, I
yeah,
think, to get that. I mean, very, like I said earlier on, very much Walter is very much, I think, a bit of a biography character of Jason Segel and probably several other people involved in creating that movie.
and I think the fact that the way that the plot works as well works because it's like he isn't just living in his nostalgia.
No. Mm-hmm.
He is stepping into a new life with this as part of it. And so it's like, we get to grow up with Walter and Gary.
Yeah, it's hard to think of somebody that age. I'm not sure exactly how old Siegel is, but he was not a kid doing this to have a coming of age story. But that's really Gary in particular, but Walter as well. And Walter, because he's so small, it's easy to think of him as a small child. But of course, the whole point of showing him and Gary at different heights growing up is that they're the same age. They're pretty close in age. And yet these are adults having adult lives and jobs and girlfriends and everything else, but they're having a coming of age story.
Jason Segel is the same age as me. He was born in 1980. So would have been 31 when this comes out. And I think for our generation, that was there's a sort of a different kind of coming of age in your 30s, and I think
it may also speak to the whole idea of, people have always said this about Gen X and especially older millennials, that, we're the Peter Pan generation. We never really grow up. So being stuck behind a gigantic juggernaut of a generation earlier than us has meant that we haven't had, some of the adult opportunities that come along. You don't own 2 cars and a mortgage by the time you're 30.
No.
Some of us are 47 and don't have one of those. I mean, I have a car, but that's it. And so there is sort of a sense of Peter Pan syndrome or arrested development or whatever you want to call it, about both generations. And maybe there's a nod and a wink to that as well in there.
But I think there's also and I don't know, maybe other generations didn't have the turning point at late 20s, early 30s, where everybody is getting married and people are settling into their careers and becoming parents about that age. And so there's, I know maybe my parents were in their late 20s, early when they had kids too.
Mine were too, and they were derided as late bloomers who should have gotten onto that task way earlier, than a decade earlier.
So I think if you'd set this in the 70s and been we're having a coming of age at 30, they probably would have been
it made no sense.
Okay, my parents did, but they were doctors, so But but I think it was the right film at the right time, and they just caught magic. They caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, that kind of leads you to the you really only get to know a little bit about Mary, about Amy Adams's character, really in the opening bit, where she's in the classroom. And that was interesting because I am a teacher. I work in adult ed now, but I did for a while teach school. I taught high school. It looks like she's teaching in elementary school in this. But the idea that she's this almost Disney princessy kind of character, which is, of course, is something she has also played to in other franchises. But she's this almost Mary Poppins-ish kind of teacher. And she goes, okay, kids, spring break time. And they'll go, aw. But we'll be back in a week, and they cheer, there's some little weird thing. I think I kind of got the impression, especially in this watching that I did this weekend, that they were going to go somewhere with that. And then it just never happened. Because that was just a little, other than showing how absolutely brilliant and perfect she is, and how deserving she is of having a grown-up boyfriend and not some, overgrown man-child, which was kind of Gary's arc. I don't know if that bit in her classroom at school really served a purpose.
Yeah,
fitting with everything else. It's one of my few criticisms of this film is I think they were going to pick up a thread there and run with it, and then they dropped it and never got back to it. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, it does feel like there could have been more Mary.
Yeah, and she got much more realistic throughout the whole rest of the film. She was, she was the only real grown up there. She's a real adult in the whole film.
And there is a tropiness to her character of the long suffering girlfriend who is waiting for the man child to grow up. But I think because the two of them are delightful.
Yes.
And just they do pull it off because it's this kind of film. I think you know, it's true, but it's, okay. So it's okay that
Yeah,
we're,
I can live with it. Like, it doesn't
we're
ruin
playing in tropes.
yeah, it doesn't ruin the film for me.
It's a musical. It's the Muppets. We're playing in tropes.
Yeah.
But it's if we're doing a critical read, we have to point out that is a
Yeah.
bit of a
It,
tired trope at this point.
it feels
Certainly,
like a dropped thread to me. Yeah.
yeah.
Dropped a
That
stitch.
we could have had a bit more.
Mhm.
But that's the continuum of female characters.
Yeah, it
Is
is. It's the same. Yeah, same thing we discussed earlier. Yeah,
yeah.
and we see that in so many franchises in film, television, theater, you name it, have been written by men with not great. This has been an ongoing thing since the beginning of entertainment. I'm sure that women have not been well designed, well written, well represented in so many projects. Some have gotten better over the years. Some never. You look back, like you and I are both avowed Terry Pratchett fans. Some of Terry Pratchett's first couple of books, the women were not.
Yep.
Great.
No. There's definitely an evolving writing of women thing in Terry Pratchett. Yep.
And then somewhere along the way, I think it was probably when he wrote Equal Rights, it kind of went, oh, duh, I get it now. And from that point on, he nailed it, and very intentionally, I think, worked very hard to make sure he nailed it. I think he intentionally went, oh, I sucked. I better go get.
Yeah, I think as his daughter grew up, there's definitely.
I think that, yeah, for sure. And I think he realized the sort of problem he was contributing to. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. I think if this was made today, there's a number of things that wouldn't be as good. Because we've had so many reboots because studios are so much more involved. There'd be a lot of things that would be less good, but I think we might get a little more interiority from Mary that would be a bit better. But I think it is what it is, and it is a beautiful piece of media. It is kind of lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, they really got it. And I was just going to say, is there anything else that we didn't?
Well, I think we should think about what.
I kind of need to run down the character list very quickly, maybe, to see if there's anybody we didn't talk about yet.
I think we'll close out by talking about if there's any parallels to Farscape. And I did see some. There's definitely the identity story and the finding a home is always where is your home is a Farscapey one. And there's always the Kermit and Miss Piggy will they won't they?
Yeah.
Which Aaron is a better drawn character than Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
But then Aaron is a better drawn character than 99% of female characters in media.
Yeah.
But I think there's some parallels between Miss Piggy and Aaron, and not just the fact that they can both kick your arse.
Yeah.
And also Miss Piggy has a very Aaron kind of leather outfit when they kidnap Jack Black.
Yeah, that's something we didn't really get into in that they despite the fact that she was the plus size fashion editor for Vogue, we did not get a lot of fashion out of Miss Piggy in this one.
We did get a lot of clothes.
We got a lot of clothes, but not like just momentary sort of snippets of whatever outfit she was in. Other pieces in this entire property is over the years we've gotten more fashion from her.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of Miss Piggy outfits that are allusions to other musicals. Like when they're walking around Paris. Yeah. I think that's very much a funny face. Kermit the Frog is kind of dressed like Fred Astaire is in that, and she's like the woman who's the fashion editor. And her and Pepe the Frog or Pepe the Shrimp are doing.
Oh yeah.
Are doing Dirty Dancing.
There's a character we haven't. Yeah, the Dirty Dancing reference. I'd completely forgotten about that as well. Yeah, they're doing the lift. Which is again, that was such a huge movie in the 80s when I was a kid. That was another nod and a wink to to us as well. But yeah, Pepe's a character we haven't really talked about yet, and has had some fantastic. He's a newer character, but has had some really fantastic moments. And was, I think, if I recall correctly, I think it was either Dave Goles or Bill Beretta, or one of them in an interview, probably Bill Beretta, I imagine, in an interview one time, saying that basically Pepe was created because they needed another character who was in similar size range to Rizzo. And we didn't really see Rizzo.
No, we didn't get much Rizzo. We didn't get a lot of Gonzo.
Yeah, one big stunt from Gonzo at the plumbing factory, and that was about it.
Yeah, he was there, but I mean, that's the thing. You can't There are so many that like everybody gets a moment, but you can't totally.
That's all you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And they did, like you said before about Rainbow Connection and stuff like that. Really, what we want with the Muppets is those ensemble pieces that pull the threads together.
Yeah, basically. And they focused on Kermit and Miss Piggy in this one, and I think that works. I think and we got some Fozzie development as well, with Fozzie being in the Muppets.
Yeah. There was some neat economic commentary, I think, there on what happens when a star fades. What happens when the shine wears off a little bit. And Gonzo went back to his roots. And remember, in the original Muppet movie, his intention was to be a plumber, and he kind of fell into show business by accident. But Fozzie's always been. I mean, he's not funny. His jokes aren't funny. He's funny. He's a funny character, but his jokes and his stand-up routines aren't funny. And so his longevity in a career in entertainment was never guaranteed. But as Kermit's best friend and I don't want to say sidekick, because I think that diminishes Fozzie too much. But as that guy that's always there to make the goofy dad joke that you're thinking of in your head, because you're thinking it, right? What happens to that guy when Kermit's not there to make sure he has work?
Oh, comedy these days is being killed by the woke mob.
Oh, yes. You can't make jokes about anything anymore. Oh, yeah.
Comedy just ages, and it just is. And so I think that him being a bad comic is much funnier than if he was ever any good.
Oh, way funnier. And the thing is that I would have to go back and watch all the episodes and all the movies again. But I don't think I'm not thinking, at least not off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of a time in when any of Fozzie's stand-up jokes would not work today in the wokeness sense of it. Like, there's probably something, and I'm just not thinking of it. But there, when he would do stand-up routines and stuff like that in the original series, the TV series, none of those today you would say you can't say that now because it's too offensive or anything else. Maybe here and there there's a few.
Well, the thing is that the Muppets, even as they do always have a bit of an edge, they also, it's always sort of warm and kind-hearted. It's very rare that you get. This is why that Miss Piggy knockoff stands out so badly, and why we all have issues with some of Miss Piggy stuff, because almost universally it is that there is a loving and a kindness to the Muppets, and it just sort of open-heartedness. Even Statler and Waldorf.
They do get a moment in this.
Everybody's favorite salty husbands.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love those. I'll watch sometimes just when I'm really in need of a laugh. There's mega clips of all the Statler and Waldorf jokes from the original TV series, just edited together on YouTube. Yeah. I'll just enjoy one of those for 20 minutes sometimes.
Yeah, they read Frozzie to Phil constantly, but it's never actually mean.
It's never actually cruel. It's never cruel.
Yeah.
No.
And I think that's, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad sometimes that we were the generation raised by Jim Henson and And Fred Rogers and Mr. Dress Up for us
Yeah.
Canadians.
Yes. Yes. And Fred Penner.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually was in a show once with Fred.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I did musical theater and stuff as a teenager. And the little theater company, summer stock type theater company we had in my hometown, we had grant funding one year back when this is how long ago this was.
Back when there were grants.
When the cigarette company sponsored all the theater productions in this country, because they can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
It was De Maurier cigarettes. So I'm probably going to get us banned off of YouTube for just saying that. So we had funding, and his show was on summer break, and he was looking for a show to do, and he ended up in Cape Breton with us.
Hmm.
And it was the Music Man, 76 trombones and all that. And I was just a girl in the chorus because I could dance, and I don't sing particularly well. So they're like, you just dance and pretend you're singing, it'll be fine. He was wonderful. He was absolutely wonderful to work with.
Yeah, just a very Canadian moment.
Very Canadian moment there. Sorry.
That's okay.
Everybody not from Canada watching this is going, what are they talking about? But yeah. I shared a stage with Fred Penner once.
Yeah.
Many, 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 many years ago. 30 years back now.
Yeah. But yeah, I like it. Just like, I think that their work kind of did make us better people.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't know that we'll do a Fraggle Rock bit on this Farscape adjacenty stuff. We're delving into the Muppet stuff, but boy, I love Fraggle Rock.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Another production with Canadian connections too.
Yeah.
Lots of Canadian connections in that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just good messaging, and you can't ever point to one, well, maybe occasionally, but generally you can't point to any one like pop culture moment or property that affected an entire generation. But yeah, you can tell when a good person's a Muppet fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the one thing on TikTok, how do you summon an entire generation, and I think if you started, it's time to put on makeup.
Oh, absolutely.
It's time to all of Gen X and elder millennials.
The first half of millennials, yeah,
would all join in, because this was fundamental to us. It was
must-see TV, as they used to say back then.
And this is us purely getting into nostalgia glasses now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And to have lost Jim Henson so suddenly, and in the years since, we've lost a few more of the original performers from that original TV series and the first couple of movies. I think there's a sense of wanting to preserve what they created. And again, this is why you were saying this particular 2011 movie hits all the right notes, is because they did a lot of that. I think they really understood that they were dealing with the legacy of somebody who's not here to correct them if they fuck it up. And I have a couple of people, not just Jim, but him primarily, it's got to be that family viewing that doesn't make the parents want to chew their own arms off with boredom. And it's got to have some social commentary, but in a universal way. So, you can apply it to any social situation and any demographic, any woke concept that, all of that kind of thing. And it will work. It'll work across the board because there's so few humans in it. You don't have to identify with the humans.
And yet there's a deep humanism. I think if there's a philosophy behind the Muppets, it's humanism.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very much.
Just like, and a love of performance. There's a love of performance. There's a love of the arts that goes all through, and not just even not just the Muppets, but the whole Jim Henson company. There's a love of the art. Which is one of the reasons why there's such why Farscape fits. Even though Farscape is so dark. And I mean, but it also has a humanist core at the center.
Definitely.
And I named this show Muppet Sex and Trauma, but the original name for the Muppet Show? Muppet Sex and Violence.
Yeah. It was sex and violence. It's again, that's that cheeky side of what he wanted this to be. No, I think they got it. And I always laugh when people it's always very, very stodgy right-wing types who go like, musicals makes no sense, burst into a song in the middle of it. I'm like, well, first of all, come to my house sometime, because I do, because I live my life like it's a musical. And I think a lot, Henson and a lot of the Henson Company performers over the years also do that. Like, there's a reason why there's great musical numbers, whether they're original songs or they're re-recordings or just reusing of pop classics, is because I'm going to go make supper in a minute, and I'm probably going to have a tune coming out of me, and I don't know what it's going to be until I start, but I wake up and some song will be in my head and I don't know why it's there, but I'm singing something in my brain.
And like, one of the things about the joy of craft and the joy of theater and the arts is it doesn't have to be life. It can be what life feels like.
Yeah.
Like that, which is, I think, when you get it right, it is what life feels like. And there are times when you feel as if you're singing an ensemble piece with the entire world.
Yeah.
Or you're singing alone in a
diner.
In a diner, and it's just you and your feelings. Like, these are ways to externalize an internal experience. And people who were like, well, it's not real. Like, do you have no joy in your life?
Yeah. Oh, they don't. They don't.
I mean, I can understand if it's not your thing, but like, in the same way that I like, sports isn't my thing, but I can understand there's a joy in the unpredictability and the physicality. And I see why my dad loves tennis so much.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, it's these are different parts of the human experience, but it isn't reality, but it is part of the human experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, like, there's just something totally unrelated to this that I saw not long ago about something about students or something, and they're gonna get a shock when they get into the real world. And somebody said, why is it that being a student is not real? And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with musicals and working in any performing arts. I mean, for a very large number of people on this planet, that is real life. That is exactly real life. So that is your job, right? There's no growing up and getting a haircut and getting a real job, like the song says. That is your real job. And I think there's a stick up in the mud or stick somewhere else contingency out there in the world who does not want to acknowledge that exists and that people live very happy lives like this, and let them go be miserable. We will watch the Muppets, we will watch Fraggle Rock, and we will sing the songs,
and I think it comes
and worry
back,
about another day,
and it comes back to the rainbow connection. I mean, someday we'll find it. The rainbow connection, the dream lovers, the dreamers,
and me.
It's about, the rainbow is an illusion, but you try and make it real because that's how you make the world better, and that's how you find connection.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't, we can, by trying to make it real. Oh God, we're going directly into Terry Pratchett here.
Yeah. Well, yesterday was May 25th, and the lilacs are out. So
that tells you when we recorded this. I
don't know when you're going to air this, but we're recording this on the 26th of May. So we just had Terry Pratchett Memorial Day. So I guess it's on both our minds.
It's the line from Hogfather, right? We have to teach ourselves to believe in the little lies so we can believe in the big lies, like truth and justice, because how else can we make them real except to believe in them and tell ourselves stories.
That ultimately, to me, one of my big themes, and not so much in my video work and stuff, but in other work I've been doing over the years, is that things ultimately all lead back to storytelling, right? We all become stories in the end, and that's ultimately what this is all for. is so when Walter, we see Walter as a kid sitting with Gary watching the Muppet Show for the first time and realizing he's not alone in this world. When we see Gonzo connecting through space and time and galaxies and realizing he's not alone in this universe. Those are the moments that I think the real Muppet magic happens is because we're telling those stories that we all need to hear.
Yeah, because we're all Walter.
We're all Walter.
We're all Walter. We're all Kermit. We're all looking for the rainbow connection.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Oh, I run a small nonprofit. I am Kermit for a day job. I am trying to control a bunch of Muppets. Where are they now?
I have done theater admin.
Yeah. Not so much my current role. My previous one, I was the ED of another small nonprofit, and I used to joke that I always needed one of those hats with two peaks on it that says "I'm their leader." Which way did they go? And this group I'm working with now isn't quite like that, but there are moments. But I'm like, there's moments I literally sit at my desk and I go, "What would Kermit do with all this chaos swirling around and penguins flying through the air?" Yeah. What would Kermit do? And I say that jokingly, but not jokingly. There are times when I'm seriously, things have been so chaotic in my life. I've been like, Kermit would yell at everybody. That's what I need to do. Everybody shut up. Those are some of my favorite moments from Kermit was honestly when the chaos has gotten too zany and he's actually telling people off. That's some of my favorite stuff. But yeah, that's my thing is, yeah, if Kermit can put up with the band and Piggy and Gonzo shooting cannons and Fozzie telling dad jokes and everything else, I can handle this. I can handle this.
Waka Waka. I think I'm Fozzie a little bit. But well, Kermit, Terri, do you want to tell the folks where they can find you?
Yes. So I am available on the social media channels, TM Roberts, HFX, pretty much everything, except YouTube, which is Terri M. Roberts. I couldn't get the other handle for it. My channel, The Pink Dumbbell Problem, has been on hiatus for a little while, but there's a whole bunch of stuff there from the last couple of years you can watch in preparation for the new stuff. I'm not as exciting as the final season of Stranger Things coming up, but I hope there's at least a few out there anticipating my return. And it will be sometime in the middle of summer break when my next couple of things come out.
And the links will be in the doobly-doo as always.
Yeah, grab me there anytime. And I'm happy to talk about fitness, feminism, and philosophy anytime you want.
And I'm Sara Ezzat, the Fat Culture Critic on YouTube, and you can find me on X and etc. Oh God, no, Twitter. I'm not gonna. They call it. And
I'm gonna go with the new name for that one. It's the old name.
Yeah. And Blue Sky, etc. etc. You can find me on the things. And Terri, what is your favorite part of this movie?
One favorite thing. I think I still got to go back to Camilla and the Hens singing "Fuck You" by CeeLo Green. I still think generations from now, I mean, we're a decade past this movie being released, and that still cracks me up. I wonder, we need to get together in about 10 years' time. Like, let's set our watches and our phones, whatever, and discuss this again in a decade, because I want to see if that still makes me laugh. That the whole telethon bit harkened back to the original TV show. It hit the theater kid in me right in the feels. But that was the moment that if he were here with us today, Jim Henson would have been rolling on the floor laughing his ass off.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. That's what I love about that moment. What about yours? What's your top moment?
I'm split. The Walter seeing himself in the Muppet Show is such a perfect moment.
It is. Yeah.
But Rainbow Connection also means so much to me. So I can't decide.
Worldwide.
I can't decide between those two. They're just those are my favorite moments.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure when I will be airing this, but we'll be doing the in between Farscape episodes, and this has been delightful, Terri.
Yes, this
We
was
may
so
do
great.
we may do another. If folks want us to do another Muppet movie,
Yeah, I have more Muppet themed merch to wear. So call me for another one sometime. We always have the greatest conversation, Sara. It's always wonderful to be on our show and chat with you. And we go off into all kinds of directions. But it's fantastic conversation every time.
And I really appreciate you coming. And yeah, this has been great fun. So we're gonna say goodbye, folks. That's all, folks.
That's all for now. See you next week on the Muppet Show.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong. Wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection. The lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that every wish would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing, and what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep? Heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sailor? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it. The rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Happy Pride, folks.